I think, I must first pay my regards to Ajay Agarwal ji, Mishra ji, and the entire team which has put together this beautiful evening. Thank you very much for putting this together, and thank you for inviting all of us here. The topic is very interesting, of course, fintech. Everybody talks about fintech. Just before we start the discussions, I wanted to put some facts and figures in front of you so that we put the thing in the context. Since 2018, fintech has sparked the maximum amount of interest among venture capital and private equity funds, and they have been putting money in India in fintechs. The rising demand for technology and fintech products with a great addressable market has been creating this excitement. In the past 4 years, this has been a sea change in the demand and importance of fintechs in the Indian startup ecosystem. And why startup? In the entire Indian financial services industry. Only in 2021, which was a year when we were in the midst of a raging pandemic, the country's fintech startups had raised $7.97 billion. 280 funding deals happened, which is actually a record. This was the highest amount raised by a single sector in 2021. Out of this, if you look at the sectors, subsectors in fintech, there was about 68% which went for the insurance tech, which attracted the largest amount of money, and 44% of the deal happened in insurance tech. Now remember, the way we describe fintech, there are 4-5 components to it. There is a lending tech, there is a neo-banking stack, there is an investment tech, there is insurance tech, and there is a pure play financial SaaS, financial tech. So this entire space has become a magnet for investments and magnet for new ideas and innovation. I think with this, I will go back and start our discussion with a very enlightened panel which we have today. Any further ado, I think I will straight away go to our experts in the panel today. I have with me Mr. Ganesh, who is a partner with Deloitte here. And whenever I think of fintech and whenever I think of banking, one thought comes to my mind: is it secure? Are banks comfortable? Are banks really doing the right thing by allowing fintechs to access their services or working with them? So what do you think, Ganesh?
A very good evening, and I hope the evening is much more beautiful after the panel discussions. The moment I thought we have got more exciting times. So I was just thinking that the whole thing is opening. But let me come back to your question. I think, one of the bigger challenges that we are facing is on the cyber security. Ever-changing big data, the bigger challenges that are coming through because of the volume of data. How do you protect customers' information, personal information? I think one of the key aspects one should look at it is how do you seamlessly make sure that all of these malwares or all of this cyber attacks are prevented on a day-to-day basis. It is ever changing, mainly because also of the changes arising out of the mobile banking, online banking, and who is the owner of the data. In fact, volumes of data that is coming across. Who is managing the customer access? In fact, when Mr. Ravindra Pandiji was talking about, I think this is a very important aspect of it. We are dealing with huge data. And also important is the platforms that we are using. I think from a cybersecurity perspective is there will be a lot of these contaminations that would happen. And finally, I think what's important is also, the insecure coding practices. A lot of times what happens when you run into a problem in any banking industry, usually you'll find that you just do what you call a makeshift arrangement in terms of addressing it. I think what is important from a cybersecurity perspective, as much as the fintech is getting into the banking, it's more like an alternative source of banking. And in fact, to be very honest, the Gen Z which is there, They don't know which is what bank we have been operating. They only know, as I said, Google Pays or Paytms and all of that. Nobody has really got the experience of this banking transaction. I think cyber security would play a major role in whatever the technology advancement it would happen.
Thank you, Ganesh. I think I'll straight away move to a banker and check the perspective. You are right next to me, Rajan. And, how are you looking at this entire fintech? Are you collaborating? Are you competing? What are you doing?
Thank you, sir, and good evening. And before I start, actually, a big respect to probably the biggest fintech in the country, State Bank of India. And from whatever we heard, Pandeyji actually talk about, I think the volumes, the numbers, the scale, and with the digital orientation that he spoke about, I'm not sure if we aggregate, leave the funding aside, but if we aggregate the entire fintech industry, I don't think it will be even a portion of the volumes which sir talked about, and that is under a regulatory ambit. So, sir, big kudos to you, Rajneesh ji, to your vision, to your execution. First, big respect to that. To your point now, in terms of how do banks and fintechs, how are they looking at this engagement? So amongst all the investment that we spoke about in the startup ecosystem that we've seen, 65,000 odd startups in the country today, the biggest action I believe has happened on the fintech space. So as we speak, I think there are around 6,000 odd fintechs in the country, 22 of them unicorns. It is expected, I saw it in a report, that the industry is expected to touch a market enterprise of around 150 billion by 2025. It may, in fact, go up as we speak. And of course, there is always this question: will fintech finish the banks? Will the banks finish the fintechs, and so on and so forth? But in my view, I think there is a lot of collaboration which the fintech and the banks could do. To me, the fintech actually, solve for specific instances. They look for problems, they look for solutions, and in a very agile, innovative, digital manner, they solve for that. But having said which, I think what we cannot overlook is that the fintechs are unregulated entities, and hence to consummate anything that they do, any service that they provide to the customer, they need a bank at the back end. The regulator needs always a regulatory body to actually consummate the transaction, and that in this case is the bank. So the very question that, is it a competition, or is it, will fintech finish the banks? I don't think that question really exists. So it is a collaborative, effort which is required, and that's what, banks, have often done. I'll just, maybe take our own bank as an example. So Yes Bank, for example, is a startup bank. So we ourselves were, is a greenfield bank formed 17 years back. And of course, public sector banks, private sector banks, were already present. So the path that the bank chose was actually one of partnership and the one of using technology as a differentiator. So today, with this whole partnership, and Yes Bank can be credited in a large way to foster the fintech ecosystem in the country. You talk about UPI. We looked at staggering volumes on the UPI. Was spoken about today because of the partnership between the bank, which we did with the fintechs. Almost 43% of those UPI volumes goes through the counters of Yes Bank. 43%, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. We also, because of these partnerships, are today the country's largest NEFT processor by volumes. Bulk of those volumes comes by fintechs, exchange houses, again partnership. So the reason I'm giving you these numbers is if the bank is actually agile, tech-enabled, and is able to partner with the right partners, I think there is a lot of benefit which both entities, fintechs and banks can achieve. But most importantly, I think the customer can achieve. I think, the eventual gainer, in my view, is the customer who gets the benefit of trust, who gets the benefit of innovation, who gets the benefit of technology.
Thank you, Amit. I'll go to the fintech side of the dais. Akbar, you are a leading proponent of fintech. Your parent company is doing a lot of work in US in the area of fintech, cutting edge fintech. How do you think fintech can be relevant in India? You know, do you have to necessarily continue working with bank, or you have a vision of working directly with the customers?
Thank you for that. And firstly, it's a real pleasure to be here in this esteemed group, both panelists as well as the audience. What I would say, Sudip, is I think there's a role for both. Banks and fintechs really have to collaborate and coexist. I think and that I would say every area. And what I'm focusing really on is on the credit tech side. If you look at the origination piece, which is where a lot of the focus has really gone into, I think fintechs can play a very instrumental role, and they continue to play a very instrumental role in helping themselves as well as lending institutions, which is banks and NBFCs. I'd include NBFCs in this category as well, to originate customers and jointly service customers. There's certain solutions that fintechs can offer, which are innovative and come from experience from outside markets, which are compliant in India. But there are also core solutions which banks offer, which I don't think can ever be displaced, quite frankly, and we can support banks in doing that. So clearly, the origination aspect is hugely important, where there's collaboration and coexistence. I think where fintechs add a lot of value, and there's obviously great examples such as Yono, etc., who are already doing this stuff. But the user experience, the singular focus on customer experience and making sure that the customer has a frictionless journey, I think that plays a big role in really expanding the ecosystem. The other aspect that I would say that has been hugely helpful to the Indian market is really the overall ecosystem that's being built out around account aggregation, even though I'm talking about a credit product, payments aspects also play a huge role in it, UPI, etc., and the various sort of rails that are being built. So those sort of aspects also combined provide, a great opportunity for banks and fintechs to partner. The last aspect I would touch on is really credit assessment and credit underwriting, which is the core of what banks do. And, that decisioning will always remain with regulated institutions, and it should always remain with regulated institutions. But I think what fintechs can actually do in that space is work with banks to help build sort of algorithms and technology tools that will actually facilitate that. And clearly, fintechs have always started from a tech-first perspective. So, to what Mr. Pandey said earlier on, your tech fin, you can think of us in that sort of category. So you can consider us as, completely committed partners to the banking ecosystem.
Thank you, Akbar. I think, Akbar has made a very relevant point. He was talking about improving the services and all that by using fintech. Now, from a bank's perspective, is the focus on improving the process flow, customer service through the fintech, or would you like to launch new products also through the fintech? Sir, what to you?
Definitely, fintech is important for the bankers, no doubt on that. But what I am saying that this, as on date till now, we have focused on the volumes where the payment structure it is there. For example, take it for an example, UPI, you cannot pay maximum more than 20,000 rupees. These are all for the urban sector and payment structure it is there. In fact, banking is not this only payment banking. It is the commercial banking. This is your fintech is more useful where I want to in the commercial sector. For example, in the private sector advances. For example, agriculture. For example, MSME. We have got only one platform, PSB 59. That's only gives the public to, they can give application and they will get the loan. That's one part. But whereas 60% more than in our country is agriculturists. Whereas public sector or national banks are serving lot of farmers, total that sector where it is to be. You see, initially, everybody, WhatsApp, nobody knows what is WhatsApp. And suddenly one day Nokia is closed. Nokia phones, we used to use a small phone. From that smartphone, everybody is converted. Like that, wherever it is that the fintech apps has to come forward and with collaboration and the persons who are working presently at the helm of the efforts in the public sector bank, they should take into consideration, they should collaborate with the existing bankers. Then only I think it will, because once we see simple a mobile banking, if you see the passbook, if you see the picture, we totally it changed. Where earlier ledger, debit, credit, net balance used to be there. That is the format we are habituated for the from last 30, 40 years. But whereas if you see that mobile banking, it will have one debit, red color, one credit in blue color, and net will be in a single line, it will be there. Like the time, these are all what fintech, you are the technological, so you are correct. But it is usual way how it will be useful to the common man. I want to say that it should be more useful to the common man in a secure form. Then only that fintech companies will be more useful. Many traders, how many traders are there? So many traders, so many restrictions. Unless until these forms to come to the commercial banking, this fintech is useful, then only it will be more useful to the bankers. As a bankers, and it is more useful to public. Of course, up to payment sector, we have very well penetrated, there is no doubt. But whereas for the penetrating into the private sector, agriculture, MSME, trading, retail, all commercial banking, it should be penetrated. As I said, corporate banking, it is already penetrated, but not this in the other segment, which was not penetrated. I wish that the fintech company should collaborate with the bankers and to get more perfection in this. Then only it will be more useful to everyone with security.
I think it's a very, very valid point. What you're saying is that I think it should not be only a personal product. It should be for commercial use as well. Today it's being more used as a personal transfer of money and personal transactions. It's not there for the commercial. So I think it brings me to the other fact that, you talked about priority sector, MSME. So is it an elite product? Is fintech an elite product today? Maybe I should ask Akbar. Are we building fintech to be an elite product? It's not for the masses. Is it that's how it is looking or getting built?
Thanks, Sudip. So what I would say is, if you look at, I mean, we talked about the numbers coming into fintech overall. I think the capital is coming in because we're trying to solve problems that need to be solved. I think if we go and do what banks are doing already, quite frankly, there's no point. At the end of the day, the kind of products that are coming out from the credit tech side and the ones that are actually doing well, are the ones that are actually creating products for people that they can actually use. So sachet type products, small ticket loans, and that obviously is being helped by the sort of underlying ecosystems. Those are the kind of things that fintech is actually trying to solve. And they're not like problems that, grab the headline, so to speak. The valuations and the sort of money coming in grabs the headlines, but the complexity of trying to deliver these solutions is being done at the back. And I think even fintech versus fintech, I think if you're thinking of the ones that are going to succeed are the ones that are not necessarily chasing valuation. They're the ones who are trying to solve very complex problems, which may not get solved actually, and some of them will. So I think that's the way we've got to look at it. So it's not really going for the big ticket, attention grabbing sort of work, but the ones who are actually going to succeed are the ones who are actually really solving real life problems for the common man.
Thank you, Akbar. I think maybe I'll give it to Amit to add the banker's perspective to this.
Thanks. It's a very interesting question, and common persona is that fintech is an elitist sector. But the other side of the fintech, actually, there are a lot of impact fintechs. And I was privileged to be part of the launch of Startup India, by the Honorable Prime Minister. One of the key things that he mentioned was, while there is a lot of innovation, What he wanted to see was more innovation on agri, on sectors which are more impact creation. And as a bank, we also see fintech, a lot of fintech. While of course, like he said, there are a lot of payment fintechs, lending fintechs. Those are also the ones who get a lot of eyeballs because they get a lot of money. But having said which, I can tell you that we also see a lot of impact fintechs. Fintechs who, in the lockdown, for example, were helping money to be transferred, back to their hometowns. The entire digitization, of money. There are a lot of the fintechs. In fact, one, where Rajneesh ji is actually one of the chairmen as well, is a agri-tech, who are actually looking at democratizing or providing farmer loans, through a very digital way of assessing the creditworthiness of farmers. So, in my view, there are a lot of use cases which fintechs are solving. Akbar mentioned they are picking specific use cases, which need to be solved. And definitely, as a bank and in our day-to-day interaction, we are seeing, those impact fintechs as well, who are actually making a difference. Who are not worried about the valuation, but who are actually worried about how do I solve the problem for a common person? How do I solve problem in agriculture, and so on and so forth? And that, of course, the banks also play a role there because, as I said earlier, the eventual consummation needs to be, through a bank, and which is where, we kind of play a role along with them.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. I think it's relevant. Ganesh, you have a 360-degree view because you come from a consulting audit background. So you get to see the banks, you get to see the fintechs. Do you think it's gelling well, and it's fintech is really trying to solve and help banks, or fintech is trying to become a little more independent? Look, I'll give you an example. Globally, if you look at US, I think Akbar is here. Fintechs have beaten banks and taken away banks' cake in multiple spaces. Are we seeing emergence of some trend like that, or India is different?
I think it's a very important point, and I think, in fact, Mr. Ranjanish is also there. Bharat Pay is a great example. It's a great example how they've penetrated so quickly and so fast. I think, one of the things which is very important when Mr. Pandyaji was also talking about is a change in mindset. I think we need to accept that fintech is here and is here for big time. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about 20,000, 1 lakh, it's all driven by regulation. But just imagine, if I give a PAN card number, I can transact a lakh of a rupee each day, translates to 30 lakhs into 3.6 crores. Just imagine the value which is created without going through the approval process. I think because we are highly regulated in India, when you compare with the outside of India, I think because we are regulated, that's where we are protecting the banking system itself. Because the economy is dependent on banking. The day the banking collapses, economy collapses. I think one of the important aspects is fintech is definitely playing a major role because one, the speed at which it penetrates. Two, the availability of money. Three, the customer experiences. Today, you have to have the customer experience. You can't be waiting for an application to go, come back. It's a speed at which, but also comes the fallout is a risk of your personal information being circulated in various media. And I think this is very, very important. Fintech will play a major role. What is important, as the other panel members are speaking, is collaborative approach. I think use your traditional banking, get the technology, marry them both. I think that synergy is what will make us the new fintech or a fin bank, whatever you may call it.
Thank you, Ganesh. I think I'll come back to you because you raised valid points regarding fintech not being there yet in the areas where probably a bank would like them to see for collaborating. Are you seeing trends of fintechs reaching there, helping, or they're not really there?
Undoubtedly, fintech is helping. I am not denying it. It is up to the payments only. As far as it is only concentrating on urban population where who are educated, those who can handle the smartphone, there only it is more useful. I mean is that fintech should be available. And for that, a government support is also required, and lot of regulations are required, because it is matches US and India. There are a lot of difference are there. In our country, we try to break the law. How to break the law? That our foremost many people do. That is to be avoided, and that is to be regulated. We have so many audits are there every quarterly, because we are dealing with the public fund. That's the main issue here. It is not that we are making from our own pocket. It is our public funds. It is our bankers' duty is to safeguard the public funds, and it is increase the value of the customer also. But definitely there are a lot of improvements required. But it is a good beginning. I think you have got a good foundation, but now it is to build up in properly, securely, then only it will be used.
Interesting. I think maybe quick round of answers from all of you before we wind up. Akbar, I'll come to you first. You see, we have seen the payment space getting a lot of traction, a lot of excitement, and he has been saying again and again. I think the focus of fintech has been on the payment space. Payments and money transfer, and that's what it has been. It started with that, and it's progressed pretty well. There are other areas, insurance. I think I was talking about insurance tech having attracted the maximum amount of money last calendar year. Now, do you see these trends catching up and increasing? Because why insurance tech is attracting money? Because insurance is the most underpenetrated sector. So how do you see this play out? Very quickly.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of really underpenetrated, and the reason again underpenetrated is also because it is a complex problem you're trying to solve, right? If you look at insurance, it is probably the most difficult customer journey to digitize completely, right? And people are making great strides to do that, not only from improving the customer journey, but even from a product innovation standpoint. So you are seeing digitized small sachet type loan products coming out in the market. You are seeing that in every sort of fintech's ecosystem. If you look at credit tech, also sachet type loans coming up, etc. So I do see what is happening in with UPI, what happened with payments. It's called credit's UPI moment, right? This open credit enabled network. All that will happen. I think it's taking a little bit of time. It's taken more time than we thought it would, but I'm sure we're going to get there and see that moment. But in the meantime, I think we've just got to continue, to plug along and do what we have to do to continue to, just go to the, include as many people into the fintech ecosystem.
I think yes, absolutely. One is creating awareness. I think most important part of it is any product that you require is to build up the market. The marketing strategy is completely different. 2 is the trust. One of the biggest challenges that we have is the trust. 3 is the timeliness. I think that is something which we need to look at it. 4th, make sure that you are there for the customer whenever it is required. Because today, with so much of data, the risk of fraud has gone up multifold. And I think that is where we need to address this. And I think fintech will play a major role. I think that is the order of the day. I think we have to embrace technology. We have to embrace blockchain. We have to embrace cloud computing. There is no way that we can say that we will still follow the rule what was there in the past.
Thank you, Ganesh. Maybe you'd like to add something there.
I'll give a completely different perspective here. We spoke about the fintechs and other enablers. In my previous role, I used to head global fintech for a large multinational bank. I used to meet a lot of the international regulators, the MAS, BaFin, Fed, and etc. I'll tell you the biggest impact or the biggest reason why this industry is thriving today is because of government, is because of the Reserve Bank of India. If it was not for the infrastructure which RBI has created, today we are leagues ahead, years, decades ahead than the most developed countries in the world. We are better than US, we are better than Europe, we are better than any country in Asia in terms of what architecture the Reserve Bank of India has created, for payments and other, even now lending and, other areas in India. I'm not sure many people are aware, but Reserve Bank of India actually has now created a fintech department which will propel innovation within and work along with the industry, with banks to propel innovation in the country. The Reserve Bank of India identifies use cases along with banks, and they run cohort and sandboxes where they actually look at live use cases. In fact, they also look at impact use cases, how they can bank the underpenetrated in the country. Those use cases are then given to select fintechs who have to work along with banks to create a solution along with that. So to me, the biggest impact which is getting created in the country today is actually because of the regulator, the Reserve Bank of India. And of course, the fact that the government really supports, Reserve Bank, to do a lot of this innovation. It gets hidden behind the scenes, but really, that's really the impact.
Your view, anything you would like to add on the cost of using fintech from a bank's perspective, or you're comfortable?
The cost of, if we have to incur, it doesn't mean that today you have incurred, tomorrow you will get profit. It is not like that. We are the commercial bank. Definitely for getting something, you have to incur, you have to make investment. There is no second thought on that. Only thing that I mean to say, service regulation. For example, a smallest loan of crop loan, if a farmer has to receive, whatever fastest mode you take it, minimum it will take 2 to 3 weeks. Any bank. I mean to say that today crop he has to make it. I want by pressing a button in the fintech, he should get genuinely his amount in his pocket. That's my intention. It is not that subsidies, whatever may you do it, but that should be the way where it will be more useful for this fintech. Whereas industries is there, today the pricing is more. He requires additional limits, whatever the sanction limits. For that additional limit, by the time bank gets sanctioned, the purpose is defeated. I mean to say that by using this fintech, he should be utilize that amount immediately. When the need is there, that time only they should get the amount. Only with the fintech only it can happen, but duly with the regulated process. That's what I mean to say. And for investment, bankers are never behind. Bankers have incurred a lot of money till now because of banking. A public sector banks are incurring that expenditure. That is, a fintechs are also coming. It is not that if it doesn't incur, we also not go. We are ready to incur, but only thing in the proper.
Thank you. I think it was a very, very enlightening viewpoints which we gathered around the table. I think one point is coming across very clearly is that the fintech needs to concentrate in areas where there is a genuine gaps. Not saying that they haven't. They have solved whole lot of problems, like it was highlighted earlier also and during our panel, that the payments process, we are probably light years ahead of many other countries. But there are areas which fintech needs to do more. They need to be more relevant to those areas to solve those problems. I think from fintech's point of view, they are trying, they are also working. There are challenges. There are, as you rightly said, smartphones are not there everywhere. If smartphone is not there, for fintech to reach there is difficult. So it's a journey. I think the journey has begun and we all are part of it. Nobody can stay behind. You have to be in that bus. We all are in the bus. Let's hope we reach the destination smoothly and quickly. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.